Hello and welcome to NBL Overtime. For the first time in the history of this great show, it's been running for a long, long time, neither Corey, Liam or Cam Luke. There has always been one of those in this chair, and for this time, Peter Hawley, Leonard Copeland, or the Blues Brothers, as I'll call you today, no one. Is this a new face?
This guy's
Is it the end of an era?
No, it can't be. It's strange, though. It is strange to be sitting here and not seeing any of the normal...
They're busy. They're doing it.
They are doing
it.
So they're too busy for this, eh?
Well,
they're too busy for the best show.
Cam definitely is.
Cam's living it up over there at the Super Bowl. There's certain things he's doing over there in Vegas that we cannot chat on this time slot. But let's have a look at the Mitsubishi Motors standings. Because as it always does, I do question sometimes whether we even bother playing the regular season because the parity within this league is ridiculous. 7 teams fighting for 3 spots on the ladder.
It's unbelievable. I mean, you look at that, the ladder, you can take it as what it's worth, but so much is going to ride on the last couple of games. And, I mean, there is a scenario, once again, as it seems to always be in the NBL, that we could come down to the last game, and not just the last game, like a point margin that New Zealand might have to hit just to get in. Like, that's just the craziness of NBL 24, and looking forward to it. There is still a random situation. It's not going to happen where Melbourne don't finish top. There is a possibility. It's very unlikely when I say that.
Mathematical.
But it is.
Chance.
That's just the kind of crazy season that we've had.
Quick question. Is the NBL getting better? I think every year we have this conversation about it comes down to the last game or the last round because it's crazy right now. We never know who's going to, we don't know who's going to win, who's not going to win. We just sit here and hope.
Up until last round, I mean, we nearly had every team still a chance. I mean, Adelaide, the way they were going, this season is the only thing tighter than this season is this mate's shirt. That's the only possible thing that could be tighter. And I'm excited. I can't wait for the last round.
No one's coming back at you.
Hey,
I'm going to get in early.
This isn't how it's meant to work. I'm meant to be the one making the jokes here. What's going on? No, but that is true. But the Hawks, the fairy tale that's been them, of course, they went 1-1 this weekend. All they need to do to lock in a final spot is go 1-1 again. Their issue is going to be, which we'll touch on a little bit later, they're coming up against Melbourne and Perth. But the big win, of course, they're the game against New Zealand, but the big one was against Sydney.
Again, for them to do it twice, and Tyler Harvey again, we've seen him do that. It was nearly deja vu. Once again, it would have sent it into overtime. He seems to love the clutch moment, and Parker Jackson-Cairo, how good has he been? But this was the one that's going to have everybody talking. The way they went into Sydney once again, into Kudos Bank Arena, everyone thought that Sydney, regardless of season being on the line, but a revenge game for what happened on Christmas Day, the massive spectacle of that was, for the Illawarra to do it the way they did. One, it's not a shock that Illawarra are playing this way, but two, I think a lot of people expected Sydney to, they fought, but we expected a season on the line type fight, and I'm not sure we got that.
Over the last couple of years, the owners, Paul Smith, I'm calling him out, he'd get on Twitter and say, we're playing against our little brothers, we're going to spank you, the highway run or whatever. Illawarra came in this game and said, no, none of that. We're in charge here. We're going to take charge. We're going to run the show and play the way we want to play. And they got the win.
Are they a legitimate title threat, or is this just one of those ones where it's a great story, they're playing fantastic basketball, there's still pales of difference between them, Melbourne, Tasmania and Perth?
The question is, why are they playing this way? I think because they love the system and they love their coach and the way they're playing, but also the way he's feeding the bigs. He goes inside to Clark, he goes inside to Frawling, and the other guys have fit in. They're winning. It's contagious. Everybody's happy.
You say, can they win a title? And there's certain things would have to go right. But again, you can't rule them out because, yes, the momentum will be halted a little bit by everybody because of the FIBA break, but that gives a level playing field. In a semi-final series, if they have enough games where you talk about the bigs, they're going to do their thing. Gary Clark's been unbelievable. Sam Frolling's been very good. But if they get hot from outside, if Yongjong Lee gets hot from outside, Tyler Harvey does his thing, Justin Robertson, I think, found his niche coming off the bench, providing a spark, and other guys chip in, Todd Blanchfield, a couple of threes. If they get hot from outside, with everything else right,
anybody. Yes.
Well, that's why they're so dangerous as well from the three-point line. And we've got to remember, these aren't just one-off games. It's a 3-game series. It's a 5-game series. Anything can happen. You steal that first game, you steal the game on the road. I reckon they're a genuine chance. But the Illawarra ladder position right now, the way that it's just moved throughout the season, there's a couple of teams we can follow this sort of graph with. I know that the Cairns Taipans follow the opposite direction on this one, the Wildcats as well. But look at that, just the slow, gradual improvement across the year.
Yeah, it's a nice looking worm, isn't it? Starting how it did at the bottom, but for them to be anchored at the bottom for 4, I think it's the worm. It's the worm, the cricket.
Funny looking worm.
We can go with the same thing. That's what they call it in the cricket, mate. Expand your horizons. Good sport in Australia. But I mean, again, credit Justin Tatum. He's done a terrific job, and we talk about the craziness of this season and the potential scenarios that could play out. It'll be A strange world for them to miss out, but if they don't take care of business at least once to feel safe, I mean, they should be safe anyway, but there is a crazy world where they can miss out altogether still.
It's hard to beat a team 3 times in this.
Oh, yeah.
In this season. They play Perth again. They spanked Perth twice. They've slowed Cotton down twice. Now, Cotton knows that. Perth Wildcats know that. I'm expecting a different style game from the Perth Wildcats when they play these guys.
It should be a dead rubber, right?
Yeah, I know, but I mean...
But there's that pride side of it too, right? Everyone keeps
course, that's what I mean about it.
figured out Bryce and all that. Bryce won't go out there and play. The other side of it, it's very unlikely that they'd play a semi-final series against each other.
Right.
It looks like that'll be probably Tassie and Perth. So unless they can go and beat Tassie in a playing tournament game. So do Perth want to rest a couple of guys? I don't know. Again, I think the pride will be on the line.
If they shut Cotton down, have they found the antidote of shutting Cotton down? Can every other team now do it the way they've done it?
Oh, if they find the antidote. There is no antidote. It's
Okay, they've shut him down twice.
Bryce Scott, I don't think they'll be able to do it.
What does he get? How many points will he get?
50. No, I'm just.
I
think he goes high 20s. He's first guy.
I think that I don't think there's a time where they're going to rest him too much. He's going to want to go out there and do his thing, and that's what we've seen Bryce Cotton do. He loves those kind of challenges.
Yep.
It seems like in the regular season scheme of things, it's kind of like the last challenge he has left, right?
Sure.
He's risen to every other one. Everything that's been thrown in his face. He had the slump at the start. We talk about the physicality. He's rose past all of them to show his greatness.
Yep.
It's kind of the last one circled. I think he's going to go out there and show a message.
Okay.
No team has been more criticised this year for their performance than the Sydney Kings. Now, on the worst side,
And they deserve it.
Illawarra game,
And they deserve it.
Apparently so. Apparently so. Well, you look at the defensive effort right now, they appear completely out of touch with each other, out of touch with their coach, and for the most part, a shambles.
These are the clips, though, Coach. Before we get, so have a look at some of these defensive clips. And this is like season on the line. DJ Hogue here, where's your position? Yes, you're guarding a shooter, but just have a look at the swipe at this. Tyler Harvey's going to try and come down the middle. Just a little lazy swipe at it. And again, your season's on the line here. What are you playing for? We want every possession. This is Denzel Valentine was guarding Tyler Harvey. Tyler Harvey just does a little front cut. He points and says, no, Jalen Adams, you go and get it. Well, that's enough space for Tyler Harvey to get a 3 off. How desperate are you in these situations? I mean, we've seen it all season long. Great tip dunk from Geordie Hunter. This is the same clip. Who's going to pick up the ball? They're pointing. DJ Hogue gets it late. Tyler Harvey's already on the move. DJ Hogue, we know, he hasn't played a whole lot, so his match fitness won't be there. This just doesn't look like a team that, one, wanted a revenge game, but two, wanted to figure out how many miscommunication switches have we seen this season from Sydney. 2 guys to the ball. Sam Froling gets another easy one down the hill. This just didn't look like a team hungry. And Jalen Galloway, he's their best defender, right? He's done his job, right? Okay, now you just got to square this off. These are the simple things. Square it off. Instead, he gets beat. There's no one there to back him up. They get all the way downhill. We've seen this way too often from a team that has enough pieces to be a good defensive team. They shouldn't be this poor defensively.
You asked how desperate they are. They're not desperate enough. Now, I'm sure when the owners put this team together, they knew there were going to be losses. They were going to win some games. They were expecting a championship, whatever. It ain't wins and losses. It's how you're playing the game. These guys aren't on the same page as their coach. They're not satisfied. Look at the owners.
That's an
They're not
angry
happy.
eyebrow.
Look at them. They're not happy. You tell me. I know these guys. They're not happy with what's going on because they got a full house. They got people flying in from everywhere to watch them play, and they put on a performance like this. It's just not good enough.
You know what I could say about this, though?
What?
This is a team that has won back-to-back championships. This is a team and a front office that recruited Will Weaver, one of the better coaches we've seen, Chase Buford, one of the better coaches we've seen. Just last year, they lost their best offensive player and their best defensive player in Xavier Cooks. The criticism of the Sydney Kings this year has been, for the most part, unwarranted. When we start talking about front office decisions being made, you are allowed to occasionally miss. Right now, it seems the hiring of Coach Mahmood was a miss. And that's not saying he's a bad coach. That's just saying with this group, it didn't work. You give me Jalen Adams, you give me DJ Hogue, you give me the rest of this roster, I'm going to say, okay, you've put together a good roster there. Unfortunately, it didn't click with the coach. So let's just forget about all the success that this club has had.
Here's the question.
They're allowed to miss.
Here's the problem I got with all that. You're a professional ball player, right? The effort that these guys are giving is not good enough. I don't care if you don't have a coach. Forget about the coach. You're a professional. You're getting paid to play. You don't put on a performance like that and swipe that ball. You got to play as a professional. Forget the coaches. Take the coaches out of hand here. You got to play as a professional, and I think you got to give a better performance.
I think that the clips we saw of the ownership, I think that's where the disappointment really comes in, right? Because yes, you can look at the X's and O's, the technicalities, all of that about the coaching, the style of play. They tried a zone that didn't work. They've tried the switching that just didn't work. A lot of people, and I was one of them, I thought that with this roster, by January, they would be at their best. But they started really well.
Yeah, they did.
And I think that kind of got them in a false sense of security. Like, we have so much talent. We have a reigning MVP. We have Jalen Adams here. We brought in an NBA caliber Denzel Valentine. DJ Hogue, one of the best players of last season, has joined. Jalen Galloway, a most improved player candidate. Geordie Hunter. And then they've got a bench core group that can win a title, has proven to do that. So they had all the pieces and they started really well. And I think, again, when that happened, maybe you get a little bit of complacency thinking, hey, we've got this figured out, when eventually, throughout a season, every team hits a wall, right? It's just how you respond to it. Every single season, it's very rare that you go through and lose a couple of games. Every team hits a wall. Once they hit theirs, it seemed they really struggled to get out of it. And whether there was pointing the fingers going on, defensively, those good teams, when you've hit that wall, they'll figure it out. We saw Tassie have hit multiple walls in the 3 seasons they've been in the league. But what do they always rely on to get them out of it? Defense. And the defensive consistency just has not been there for this Sydney team. Ultimately, I think that's where they've fallen apart.
Have you seen a player on that team say, wait a minute, time out here, bring it in, this is not good enough? There's nobody. There's nobody taking charge of playing on the floor. I'm a old school. Forget the coaches. Take the coaches out of it. Take the owners out of it. You're playing basketball in front of 16,000 people. You don't want to look bad. The performance that they gave, those guys look bad. Who wants to look bad if you're playing professional ball? Nobody. So if you're getting paid to play, you got to go out and play.
We spoke a little bit about this in the game, that the unlosable game, right, against an undermanned Southeast Melbourne Phoenix.
That was the cherry on top of everything that has gone wrong this year. We talk about effort, consistency. Southeast Melbourne were everything that Sydney needed and wanted to be this year.
So I want to talk about, again, the recipe of the team and the makeup. At halftime, when you're down to that team, any other team you can figure out, if that's, say that's Melbourne United, Chris Golding, a couple of these guys, Dave Barlow, those guys are ripping into everyone, right? So then when Dean Vickerman would have come into us in 2018, he wouldn't have had to say anything.
That's right.
So I look at this Sydney makeup, I'm like, Sean Bruce, the captain, the leader, he's going to be vocal, for sure. He always has. He does a tremendous job of that. But everybody else, Jalen Adams is a notoriously quiet player. He just goes out there and hoops. Denzel Valentine, a bit quiet. DJ Hogue's a very quiet personality as well. Geordie Hunter is a great positive person, but if he comes in and being upset, how's that responded to? I think that makeup of groups when you needed, when the backs are against the wall, I just don't think they had enough vocal guys outside of Angus Glover, Sean Bruce, and again, that matters.
But that is the role of the modern day coach. You look at, I use Dean Vickerman as the poster boy for what a coach should be these days. You are 40% basketball analytics stats and almost 60% psychologist. When you get to the professional level, that's what you are. When you talk about building a culture, right now, and admittedly, Mamu's only been there for a year, so it's tough to judge, but right now, you've got coaches that will stand behind you and whip and say, run through that brick wall, or you've got players or coaches that you'll stand on the opposite side of that brick wall and they'll run through it for you. Right now, he seems to be somewhere stuck in the middle there, and it just hasn't worked. And the sooner you rip that Band-Aid off and move on to the next thing, I think it's better, because he's a better coach from what his record shows. They've gone to the G League well a couple of times. They've gone to it again. This time, unfortunately, it just hasn't worked. And it's not a knock on the ownership. It's not a knock on the front office. It just sometimes doesn't work. It's tough to go 3 for 3.
And the last thing on that, I will say, what would have helped Mahmoud's job a little better this year and help him to understand this is a guy like a Daniel Kickett, right? Those older guys, the Dave Anderson, the Jesse Wagstaffs, the guys who have been around the league, they're veterans. You throw them out there for a few minutes, but all their work is really done off the court, in the locker room. That would have helped. Sean Bruce is probably doing everything he can. I said he's tremendous in that role. But that real, true veteran who's been around and understood it, that would have taken a little bit more pressure off. I believe they've missed that.
Well, and sometimes you don't need a player like that when you've got a guy like Xavier Cooks, which they had the last 2 years.
Did it on the floor.
He's a leader by playing, and I think we're just seeing how much of a loss that is now, especially towards the back end of this season. But from a somewhat negative, let's move over to something a little more positive. The fight for the final spots. 9 teams in contention, as I said off the top. 7 teams competing for 3 spots. The Hawks and Breakers going into this round both have 2 games. They'll have the advantage, but clearly that Brisbane versus New Zealand Breakers game on the Friday means the world.
That's the one, right? Brisbane. If Brisbane beat New Zealand, it gets so incredible.
Are they in? They're in.
Brisbane are in.
Right.
If they lose, they can still make it, but it makes it really hard. So say Brisbane beat New Zealand, which we'll get on. There's going to be some emotion attached to both sides. That's season defining, and we'll talk a little bit about what's coming on for New Zealand. But then it gets juicy. There's a Twitter profile that does a great job. I think it's Statsman74. There's 128 possibilities left with how the ladder could shape out. And
there's anyone who tells you, there's anyone who says, oh, no, this is what's going to happen. I can show you a fool and I can show you a liar. Because absolutely, no one knows.
That's
right. Show me a picture of you, Leonard, I'll show you both.
But so if Brisbane win and the Hawks lose both, there's a way the Hawks could fall out at a percentage. And as we said, so Sydney can beat the Phoenix, and there's some rumblings about Phoenix getting some players back potentially. So that could be a very interesting watch. When everyone's thinking they just need, the percentage is likely to come into play if Brisbane win between Sydney and New Zealand. So then we could have that situation I was talking about off the top where New Zealand play Adelaide and have to win by, say Sydney beat the Phoenix by 3 or 4, New Zealand's going to have to win by like double digits, like 10 points against Adelaide and jump percentage. It's that close. And that's what the NBL 23 season's all about.
Look, let's go back to the Brisbane-New Zealand game.
That's all that matters.
Brisbane going to New Zealand, Abercrombie retiring, last game. You know how hard it is to travel that far and to get that win? Even though they don't have Lamb, the emotions in the building, I'm sure it'll be a sellout. The emotions in the building. Him crying.
Oh, yeah.
I almost cried. Yeah, that's how. So when they land in New Zealand, it's all about Abercrombie and all about getting this win, this last win for him.
But that emotion can also get you a little tense.
Of course it can. Of course it can. But the way Brisbane played defense, for me, I got to go with New Zealand.
And also, on this, one thing to watch out with New Zealand, because I originally was thinking on the very similar lines, but there's not a huge amount of players on this team that have that crazy emotional connection with Abercrombie, guys that have won championships with him, guys that have gone to war with him week in, week out. You know, his glory days and when he was winning, a lot of those guys have moved on.
Right.
So if those guys were on the team, it's game over. Abercrombie's retiring.
But they're going to be in the stadium. They're going to be in the stadium, though.
Yeah.
Watching, they're going to be there with him.
The flip side of that is Brisbane are playing for their season. Yeah. So again, they're going to come in and say if they lose, they're out. So they can still make it, but they'll basically be done. That's going to have a bit of an emotional attachment. But Sam McDaniel's been elite for Brisbane. They're going to slow down Parker Jackson-Cartwright. Parker Jackson-Cartwright this season has been, what a find, firstly for Monty Mayo, but unguardable.
Yeah.
His speed, his quickness for his height to have still such an impact on the game, putting up these ridiculous numbers. Look at that in round 19. Nearly 28 points, 6 assists. He just gets steals, he gets in there. And teams do try to post him up at times, but it's almost like, okay, if you're going to do this, he's too quick. He just gets around the front, steals the ball, and off he goes.
The interesting thing, Leonard, is with Parker Jackson-Cartwright, bringing him in, I don't think that New Zealand intended for him to be just as good as what he is. Because Will McDowell-White, one of the biggest acquisitions.
What are you accusing him of?
No. Did he too? Get on the ground. Get on the ground.
Got him.
One of the biggest acquisitions.
Yep.
Hasn't really been able to do a huge amount. He's had to play a little bit of a different role as well, albeit being in.
But he's still very good.
Of course.
Whenever Parker Cartwright goes to the bench, and you bring in a Will McDowell, you bring him in off the bench, he's been magnificent, man. So I'm very happy that, and the way he's played the other day against Melbourne United, shooting threes, getting them going. One guy get into foul trouble, the other guy can pick up the slack. That two-headed monster is dangerous. It's very dangerous to Brisbane because, yes, Brisbane have a guy who plays McDonald who plays defense, but who else is going to shut that down?
I'm just going to put down a note here that Leonard struggles with three-word last night. Parker Cartwright and Will McDonald.
McDowell.
What is, again, they've had a horrible luck with injuries, as a few teams have had, but to star players has just been so unfortunate. For where they're at still, give a lot of credit for the team and obviously Monty Mayo for an outstanding job. The silver lining of Anthony Lamb being hurt is that Will McDowell-White knows now he has to step up and do a little bit more scoring, a little bit more facilitating.
And he can do it.
And he absolutely can do it. But now he doesn't have a choice. He has no choice. He has to step up and do it. And I think that's the silver lining to them missing an all-NBL first-teamer in Anthony Lamb.
Nathan Sobey on the opposite end of the floor, having a fantastic year so far. Always with Nathan Sobey, there's, you take with the good with the bad.
Yep.
37 points here against Adelaide. Just after coming off a game where people were questioning his shot decision late in the game, this is a big answer back.
I think look, he plays well against Adelaide anyway because he played, the first game he had 36 against him, 37 against him this time. So he looks forward to playing against his old team just to let them know what they missed out on, all right? But we know Sobey can go to work and get the job done, but he also can play those games where he takes some bad shots, hits the ground, is 5-on-4 getting back, and it hurts the Brisbane Bullets. Now, if he's not firing, and Smith and those other guys aren't contributing the way they have this year, then Brisbane are in trouble.
He has to play well.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
And the other guys as well.
The other guys have come along for the ride, but again, look at the teams that are fighting for it. New Zealand have multiple guys. Like Parker Jackson-Kara can go off. Zion Cheatham can go off. I mean, Finn Delaney's still coming back from injury. Will McDowell-White. They've got multiple guys. Muntis has shown that he can. Nathan Sobey needs to have a semi-decent night to give them a chance to win. And then everyone else has to come along. Who guards him is going to be an interesting thing to watch as well from New Zealand. You'd think that it's probably going to be Muntis getting the start, and Tom Abercrombie will get some minutes on him. But what made him have the 37 points? He got off to a flyer. That first few minutes is so important to guarding Nathan Sobey. If you let him feel good about himself, it's almost, he becomes unguardable because he's that kind of emotional player that he sees a couple go down and all of a sudden he's in this mindset where no one can stop him. And they struggle to. He had 37 points in the first 3 quarters. Didn't score in the fourth. Like, don't get me wrong. He should have had a 50-piece in that game.
Melbourne, Perth, Tasmania. Who rounds out the 6?
I think Illawarra will be in there for sure. I'm going to give Brisbane that win, I think. I think Brisbane are going to sneak in there, and then it's going to come down to New Zealand and Sydney. And I think if New Zealand know there's a number on Adelaide and potentially some players coming back for the Phoenix, I actually think there's a strong chance the Kings could be in trouble here.
I'm going Sydney and New Zealand. I don't think Brisbane's going to make it. I think it's hard to go to New Zealand, beat them, with the emotions going, and that's a tough game. So.
Love, tell you what, this is almost borderline impossible, but as it is every year, the parity top to bottom within this league. You said, has the NBL gotten better? I think this is the proof, is that it has in every way possible. And as we go to the break, tribute to a New Zealand legend.
That's made more big shots over his career than Abercrombie. Abercrombie! Tom Abercrombie! New Zealand through and through delivers when his team needed it most.
After 16 years at the NZ Breakers, I'll be retiring from all professional basketball at the end of the season. I've been so lucky to spend my entire career playing for the Breakers, my hometown team. I'm happy that I was able to play to an age where my kids could watch me play and understand what I did. And to my children, thank you for letting my dad live out his dreams. It's time for me to be there for you now.
There have been plenty of players that have come through the NBL, but few have had the impact of Tom Abercrombie. Quite the CV, and a jersey, no doubt, will be hanging in the rafters very, very soon. 425 games, 4-time NBL champion. You can read it all right there, but I'll tell you what, that is one of the better careers we have seen in the NBL. And the thing we want in this league is the best players to remain in the league. Because so many times we see guys go over and, Brad Newley played some of his best basketball overseas. Dave Barlow went for a time overseas. Guys that stay here, whether it be in New Zealand or Australia, and give us a full career of their best basketball, we need to pay as much homage to as possible. Tom Abercrombie is the definition of that.
There you go.
There it is, going up.
That's beautiful.
You like that?
Imagine playing a 425-game career, and that's your...
Hey, I told you this. Well, my budget was allowed to do.
Is that Andrew Gay?
That's he's one of the, not just the greats of New Zealand basketball, which is obvious, but one of the all-time NBL greats. And that jersey will hang in the rafters, no doubt. And geez, it was an emotional press conference to watch. The way he spoke about it. Not the first time with the New Zealand retirement I felt like that either, because when they did the huck of a Kirk Penny,
yes,
I was on the floor. And again, you envision something similar towards the end of Tom Abercrombie, that shine of respect, because he has been one of the best, 4-time champion. What he's meant to that club, to be a one-club man throughout all of that, he is... you go through their entire successful history the New Zealand Breakers have had, and you just cannot not think of Tom Abercrombie. That's what
it's always tough to recover as well when you lose a guy like that. Like Modi, even like Tom Abercrombie wasn't putting up crazy numbers this year, but Modi always spoke on the importance of having him out there on the floor and having him with his team, because good luck finding another leader. Like guys that come to mind are, Chris Golding at Melbourne. I think we'll see a very similar guy that spent his whole career here, but Abercrombie is one of the better NBL careers you'll see.
He's a voice of reason. And look, you're right. He didn't play a lot of minutes. He didn't score a lot of points. But you rest assured, whenever Modi had something to say to a player, he'd always come in and pat the guy on the back and say, look, this is the way it should be done. He was the voice of reason. The haka, when you spoke about the haka, right? And can you imagine doing that the last game and playing against the Brisbane Bullets? That's why I think they don't have a chance, because I got emotional.
That'll get me.
It'll get me too.
Yeah, it'll get me.
Now it's got me thinking, if they do the haka before the game for Tom Abercrombie, Brisbane may lose by 30.
Oh, yeah, it'll get me.
Such is the emotion in that building.
It is tough, man.
But again, it's the sign of respect. He's seen the top, right? He's seen absolutely everything, the success. He was such a crucial part of all their championship runs, but to get New Zealand to being one of the most successful franchises. But he also would have been a key piece behind closed doors to the struggles with the COVID years when they had to spend all the time in Australia and everything they went through, him with his family and everyone else with their families. He would have had a lot to do with trying to help everybody through that as well as himself. So he's seen both ends of it and he's come out of it definitely a better player, person, and again, what a career. And you can't write a script.
Athletic, could shoot the three, but his IQ was untapped. He was very smart on the floor, knew how to get guys the ball, knew the plays, knew what to run, what not to run. Smart player.
And as his offense kind of started to teeter down a bit towards the end of his career, but his defense went even higher, and that's where he became so valuable the last few seasons, where he was just an elite defender, one of the best. Chris Golding still says that up until a couple of seasons ago, might even still be now, that he was the hardest guy to have to play against.
Size.
His
so
length
long,
didn't get screened. He would always contest every single shot. That's a mark of massive respect.
Well, it's always amazing that a guy like that, he really didn't seem to drop off too much athletically. Usually with guys like that are athletic beasts, you see a drop off quite quick.
Just ask Jaren Jackson Jr., man.
Yeah.
Baptised Jaren Jackson Jr. That's going to happen.
We don't have that, do we? That was a
we should have had it.
I know.
If Tom Abercrombie is right up here, nowhere near the doghouse in his entire career.
Here we go.
And boy, I can hear the barking all the way from
here we go.
right now, because Tajir McCall, right now, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We could probably cross out the good right now. The Tajir McCall situation in Cairns is not pretty, to say the least. And right now we've heard, it's all hearsay, by the way, what goes on behind closed doors of, does the coach want him out? Is it not gelling with the players? But the body language, the minutes, it all mixes up into a terrible situation.
We spoke about it last week.
We had the inside scoop.
We did. And look, for a guy who's been the leader of that team, who's coached in the preseason, who's helped 40 go through the ups and downs, for him to get 8 minutes, we're not blind. We're not stupid. We've all been in the game. We've all played the game. Well, some of us have.
Yeah,
We've only played 2 games. That's right.
Well, technically, he
was on a team. He was on a team. We've all been through this. You don't play your superstar 8 minutes if something's not going on up there. So at the end of the day, what we're hearing is they're not mixing anymore. It's just oil and water, and whatever one says, another one doesn't say. It's just it's bad coming.
Still trying to wrap my head around the flawless segue from Abercrombie that Felix just delivered. But again, you go back to and listen to 40's press conference talking about how they're playing the younger guys and the guys who are trying to play the right way. I went back to round, I think it was round 16, or whenever they're playing Adelaide, still a chance to make the play. So this is kind of season on the line. But this is, you talk about he was coached. We know he's so much better than this, right? As a player, and you get blown by there. Never once would you ever cheat on a Jason Kadhi's screen. And this was part of the scout. You've got to chase that out, right? And again, being the extension of the coach, where is it? Okay, you're out of the play. Where's the hustle to get back into it? And I think this is where it began of, okay, Jacob Wiley doesn't shoot a heap of threes, but he shoots 40+%, so you've got to get there. This is why he only played 8 minutes. He had 2 minutes in this third quarter, and these are all in the 2 minutes. Well, he can make these, right? He's very good at getting the floater, one of the best floaters in the league, albeit other than the player who's going to be on in the next couple of segments, and Alan Williams. But he took these 3 shots and then didn't play the rest of the game. And as I said, he can make them, but that combined with what Adam Ford's saying is we're trying to play a certain style. And again, defensively, he's been trying to find a mix. And to go back to that Adelaide game, and I'm looking and saying he was an extension of the coach. So whether he's not doing that on the floor, but if you're a young player, which Cairns has an awful lot of young players, and if you're Adam Ford, you're saying, well, I don't want Taron Armstrong to see our extension of the coach not buying in on a must-win game. I don't want to see that. And I think that's where it's come from, is saying, well, we're trying to move forward in this direction and play this way. And if you're not going to do it, then I'm not going to play you. And that's where I think it's going to come down to. Taron Armstrong's been phenomenal, which we're about to talk about. Sam Wardenberg started to find some form before getting hurt. He's saying, okay, I want to see us play this way, and if you don't want to play that way, then I can't play you.
Absolutely.
Taron Armstrong. I just want to touch on that one, because he's another guy during this year that I think was hurt by the acquisition of Miller, Tajir McCall. Obviously, they didn't expect Miller to be as good as he is. And for Taran Armstrong's entire career before getting to the NBL, now I understand it is a step above, he has been the focal point of the offense. He's been the leader, the ball-dominant point guard. And I strongly believe that Taran Armstrong can be the leader of this Cairns Taipans team. And I think next year, so clearly, you would imagine Tajir McCall is not going to be around next year. I think all signs point to yes on the Magic 8 ball. But Taran Armstrong can clearly, in my opinion, and I think Cairns will be a better team for it, have the rock in his hands on every possession.
He's been unbelievable this second half of the season. All the clips we're watching right now, and again, you look to the future and where he started from, and yes, he had the struggles at the start. He had a poorly timed injury and then had to try and find his feet with a team that still had some other pieces coming in and out. He's been enormous this back half of the season. And again, for the future he has, but to come in, if he looks at his rookie year, as takes a step back at the numbers side of things and the impact and says, did I start one player and leave a better player? Yes, then I think he's in a very good spot. He's going to have a massive part for him. Sam Wardenberg to be locked in, I think it's a really positive thing for Cairns in the future. And I think he's going to be enormous in this league and beyond.
I think the fact that he has 40 as a coach gives him, is going to push him to the top, because he's one of those exciting players. He just reminds me of a guy who plays a lot older. He has an IQ. He knows where to find the person that's open. He's not rushing to take a bad shot. He's not out there trying to get his numbers. He's trying to make the team better. And that's why he'll be a superstar in this league one day.
Well, that's the thing with Adam Ford. Adam Ford gives you a lot of leash. He gives his players a lot of leash. We saw Tajir McCall being able to coach games in the preseason. I think if you give that same leash to Taran Armstrong, you're going to get a really, really good product. And look, Sam Wardenberg was fantastic in the first half. Unfortunate, he went down with injury, and it did sort of change the flow of that game. Such was the ability he was playing with in that first half.
It's a really tough position because, again, I think he will have a very bright future, but I really feel for him on a personal level, because I think Achilles tightness is what he said. He didn't want to push it when he said in the press conference that he saw what happened recently. It's happened a few times in the NBL, but this isn't the first time when a good thing's happened in his career or he started playing well, he's had to deal with this. He's missed 2 summer leagues because of poor timed injuries. I spoke to him after the game. He's just like, I just can't catch a break. But again, the positive is how young he is and the steps he's taken. He will be better for this. He will be better for this. And the slump he's been in this year, for it to happen his second year after winning the Next Generation Award, he will be a better player and a better person because of this, the way he comes out of it the other side. And I think he's going to be huge.
I think Cairns are in a good position, because if you can sign Wardenberg and Armstrong and then build around those two guys who do the right thing, play the right way, who can play, then you got a coach like Adam Ford, then you're on the rise.
I'm happy with it. If I'm a Cairns Taipans fan, I am happy, albeit a tough end of the season. We're cutting to a break, but coming up next, my man, Olga Ulick.
And just before I let you go, Brian, do you like Adelaide?
I think it's a great program. I really do. I think it's a great program and it has unbelievable potential. When I came over here, it was Melbourne and South Australia, and I know they got great ownership. And again, my situation on coach, again, I don't want to take anybody's job, or I've just let everybody know whether it's here or there, I'm available. And if there's a team here that needs my services or I can be of help, I'm in. If they need something and there's something available there would definitely be an interest.
Oh, good old Brian Goorjian. He can always talk a little bit cryptic, but luckily enough, we've got a translator here, Leonard Copeland, who can translate what he was trying to say there.
Show me the money.
Show me the money. Look, he wants Adelaide, but they're going to have to pay. I'll tell you what.
And so they should. They should. You know?
No, I don't know. I might not be sitting with you on that one. I
all
reckon
right,
Scotty Ninnis is doing quite well, but luckily we have in our, is it Adelaide correspondent or ESPN correspondent? Because I reckon a lot of news this year
is on fire
has
today.
been circling.
You're on fire today.
The Adelaide 36ers. Olga Ulick, welcome in.
Thank you. You really think it's the only team I report on?
No,
because it's the only team where there's so much drama happening, right?
That is what I was going at. Adelaide is one of the teams where everything's happened, from coaches to players, contract talks. It's all happening. But Gorge is the biggest talking point right now. DJ locked in, Isaac in talks, which we'll touch on in a bit. But Goorjian, can you give us a bit? Is he locked in?
No, he's not quite locked in, right? But he met with the team last week, right? He had a Zoom call with Grant Kelly, the owner of the Adelaide 36ers, and so that makes this way more real, right? Before that, it was just a ton of interest from Adelaide in Brian Goorjian, in the same way that any team with a vacancy would have interest in Brian Goorjian, right? 6-time coach of the year, NBL coach of the year, 6-time champion. You are going to go after Gorge if he's available and you have a vacancy. The meeting made it way more real. It showed how mutual the interest was from Gorge's side. This is something that is, there are steps toward this happening that weren't there before last week.
Before we let these two hyenas dig into this topic, Scotty Ninnis, is there any talk within the playing group, because they're seeing this stuff as well, is there any talk saying, hey, no, we don't want Goorjian, we want Scotty Ninnis, or are players relatively happy either way?
I mean, we saw the public comments from Dejan Vasiljevic. If this team decides to bring in Brian Goorjian, and unfortunately that would mean that Scott Ninnis was not the head coach of this team, I don't think anyone in that team will say anything negative toward Gorge. I don't think that's the thing that would happen. Also, there isn't enough of this team that's coming back to really have any sort of like material say in who that coach is going to be.
The interesting part of the whole Adelaide talk, because remember when Gorge first said he had interest to come back and to coach, and he said that his focus is on Paris and he wouldn't do anything until afterwards. So if that stays true, you think Adelaide's a club that says, you know what, we're going to announce it if it does happen beforehand, and you don't have to touch or have to be around if you want to focus on the Boomers, and we'll see you after Paris, and they're okay with that? I mean, it sounded like he's like, I'm going to be hands off until after Paris.
From what I understand, if Gorge is the decision, there is already like a semi-plan in place for the processes to begin with potential assistant coaches in Adelaide while Gorge is doing his thing in Paris. So that's already something that has been spoken about, assuming this gets over the line.
If Goorjian gets the job, though, isn't there plans to keep Ninnis around as well, like the general manager or basketball or an assistant coach as well?
So I don't know if it would be as that general manager of basketball role. I think there's a different skill set for that role that someone needs. I don't think it's one that Scott Ninnis necessarily has. It's one that is generally like a broad network around world basketball. I don't think Scotty Ninnis, I don't think that's his expertise. Right. There is a desire to keep him around in some capacity. What that is, I don't know yet.
You have to. I mean, if that's the decision they go down with Gorge, which I understand, the greatest of all time, Scott Ninnis, he bleeds Adelaide 36. Yeah, so he absolutely, and what he's done in the club, he needs to stay.
See, I don't quite agree with that, because then you've got a head coach and then you've got another guy who wanted to be the head coach and they were both fighting. He's sitting there wanting Goorjian to fail so he could potentially step in his interim again. I just think it's an environment where it's two people going for a job. If one of them gets it, the other one just can't be around. I just think that can create a bit of a toxic workplace, especially when Ninnis already has a relationship with these guys.
But Ninnis has also come out and said that it's not about his ego. He just wants to be around the Adelaide 36ers and help out as much as he can.
I mean, Ninnis has been fired by the Adelaide 36ers before, right? And he's still stuck around.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think... And it may be something that the team may take for granted, but I think if they do choose to go a different direction from Ninnis, I think he will stay around. I don't think he's going to have any bad blood.
What about Isaac Humphries? Because right now, locked in DJ, Isaac is probably the guy, you look at the way that they've played this year, one of the golden zones, one of the key points of their team this year, he's probably demanding a pretty big price.
Yeah, and News Corp reported that the talks between Isaac and Adelaide broke down. I've heard the same things. Both parties are just very far apart right now from a money standpoint.
What are we talking about here? What kind of money are we talking about? We know you know. What are we talking about? Give us a ballpark.
You know we don't talk money on here.
No.
We do.
You guys do. When we're not on air. You guys don't know that. There is a range that Humphries camp wants, and there is a range that the 36ers are offering, and unfortunately right now they're just not quite close. And when you look at the way that Isaac Humphries finished this season as one of the best local players in the entire league, you would assume that he would be paid like one of the best local players in the league, and the initial offers that Adelaide have put forward don't match what that number is.
It shocks me. It shocks me that it's not close, because as you said, if he had a little injury niggle, which was the question mark going into the season, or if his form was really low, then I could understand being far apart. But that does surprise me that it's not at least a little bit more enticing for him, given that the injury things is a thing of the past now, and the way that he's performing, that it's not close. That does shock me.
Do they sign the head coach first? I know we're going to get onto this later, but do you sign your head coach first? Because what if your head coach doesn't want
in a perfect world,
somebody else, or wants another five who can do different things than Isaac? Isaac's playing fantastic basketball.
But again, to find those, we talk about DJ being locked in, right? And we talk elite local knockdown shooters. There's two. There's Chris Golding and there's DJ Vasiljevic. So elite offensive threat big men, there's a couple as well. There's a handful. So to be able to lock that in and to kind of build around that, I think is a very good starting point. And they've proven to be able to play alongside each other well as well. I would have looked at doing that.
Leonard, you're a GM right now. How much are you willing to pay Isaac with a dollar figure on it?
We don't talk dollars here, but look, he's worth a lot of money. He's played.
He's worth elite top tier
Yes,
money.
100%. He's worth. Look, you got to give him big money. It is what it is. He's been playing that style of basketball.
Love that no one's going to put a figure on it.
Yeah, no one wants to put a figure on it because we don't know what they're making. So
Okay, let's do this. Let's say Duop Reith comes back to the NBL.
Yep.
Right? Let's say he's worth $600,000.
Yep.
And then let's say there is a minimum center. That person is worth just under $70,000.
Right.
In that spectrum, where is Isaac Humphries?
400 maybe, 450, 500.
There we go.
How far are they off that number?
Am I close? Would you be somewhere around it?
You are right on track.
Bam, give me some. Jim.
Are there any other clubs?
this job, I'm outta here.
One that Isaac would look at, but any other clubs who are interested in bringing in?
Of course they would be.
So the way you look at that is who are the clubs that have local big men coming off contract?
Sydney.
And so the Sydney Kings will have Jordan Hunter and Jonah Bolden coming off contract. Tasmania will have Magnay coming off contract. You look at New Zealand with Magba Matang off contract. There is a very good chance of a big man carousel. We've spoken about this on the marketplace.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise both of us if there is just like a swap of a lot of these dudes.
Is there a world where Will Magnay and Isaac Humphries are together on the same team?
No.
No, I don't think so. I saw it on Twitter. I was like, I don't think that's a possibility.
Feeling all right?
Hey, Sid from Toy Story over here. This is going on.
Hey, don't you come at me, Frozen.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. We got them all in today.
Okay, Southeast Melbourne are upon review. So is the panel to this show right now after those two comments. The Southeast Melbourne review process. Now, I'm no expert, I'm no GM, but you'd have to say it starts with how do we stop these guys getting injured?
That is a part of it, right? So Tommy Greer, and from what I'm told, an outside consultant, they're going to come together and have a thorough review of all of their performance processes. So that goes from all the stuff that you see on the court to the medical to everything.
Preseason, everything.
Everything, right? All of the processes within that franchise, and they will then report to ownership what they see. And this also includes guys who are on multi-year deals. Are these players that we want as part of the future of this franchise, right?
Is this an internal review run by the club, or is this an external company running
this? This is Tommy Greer and an outside consultant coming together and reporting to ownership what the review of these processes are, and if there are things that are out of whack, these are things that we can fix.
And again, I feel like it needed to happen, right? With everything that everyone's spoken about, it's been heavily documented. Because it's hard to think about, but a couple of seasons ago, they were 20 minutes away from winning a title.
Yeah.
Just a couple of seasons into the league as a franchise. If they don't lay an egg in that second half of the game, a semi-final Game 3 against United in an empty Kudos Bank Arena, they win that championship because they play a Bryceless Perth in the grand final series. And that we would probably be talking different things.
Yeah, of course.
But because of that, we look at it as though they haven't had a whole lot of success since they started. And again, the new facility they've got now and everything, I think it can be a very attractive place for some high-level talent and to build around. And I think Mike Kelly's going to be hopefully given the opportunity to continue to try and do that.
Southeast Melbourne certainly with a lot to work out during the off-season. One game to go though. Olgun, thank you for joining us. Next up, Sauce Williams talking all things NBL awards. Welcome back to NBL Overtime. We're here with Sauce Williams from the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. We're about to tuck into all the NBL awards, but Sauce, first, we were talking Isaac Humphries. You are a member, potentially president of the Big Man Society. You are keen on this man getting a big dollar figure.
Pay the man. Pay the man. He's shown in this last part of the season that he is an elite local talent and should be kept in Australia and should be paid by the team that he's with now because they need that position.
Is there any reason, you've had some of your really good scoring games against Isaac, is there maybe any of that? Is there a reason you want him back in the league so badly and such a big figure?
No, but it has nothing to do with that. I like to evaluate the talent that I see, and he has shown fully healthy that he's a bad man. When he gets the ball on the block, he knows what to do with it, can play really well out of the pick and roll, and is a sneaky good defender, uses his 6'11" frame to affect some shots, and I just think he's a really valuable piece for an NBL club.
If I'm Isaac right now, I know I'm going to get the money somewhere. I wouldn't be in a rush to sign right now.
No.
You know why? Because what if another coach comes in and doesn't play the same way Ninnis plays?
Yeah.
Listen, and they don't give. When you do interviews with what's his name?
Isaac Humphries.
Isaac Humphries. When you do interviews with Isaac Humphries, the first thing he says is, "I'm happy to get the ball early."
Yeah.
So when you throw the ball down to him, he feels like he's a part of it. Now, what if another coach comes in and doesn't go to Isaac?
I mean, I think you coach the talent you have. So I think that if that's what you
Right.
then okay, then maybe
like Sydney's coach, like the Sydney's coach. Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? So when
This is a conversation
Firstly,
we're
Coach
talking
is
about.
worked up right now, not because of you, because of him.
Yeah.
Felix is worked up Coach, because I've never seen Coach so fired up.
Okay.
No, all I'm gonna say-
I'm on your page, Sauce. I'm with you. I understand.
Leonard has a very, very good point there. Don't recruit a coach and then tell him this is the way you have to coach.
100%.
You recruit a coach because of the way that they can coach. And I think Sydney
Thank you.
now has seen some issues with that. But time remaining.
So, are you going to sign Gorgian and say, Gorgian, we don't want you to coach the way you coach. We want you to coach these guys the way they play.
It's not about that, though. It's about using the talent that you have. If they believe that the best option for them going into this offseason at the 5 position is to bring Isaac Humphries back, you know what you got. And so you adjust your
Why
game
haven't you
plan
signed him yet?
accordingly.
So obviously
You know
they don't.
That's it.
Well, why haven't they signed him yet? Something's going on.
If I'm going to get Celine Dion to sing at my wedding, I'm not going to tell her to sing a Nicki Minaj
Your
song.
wedding?
It's your wedding, mate.
Your wedding.
It's your wedding, mate.
We couldn't think of anything more hypothetical.
Hey, all I'm saying, Celine Dion probably not going to nail the Nicki Minaj number.
That's right.
I'm going to get Nicki Minaj to sing.
I disagree.
Well, actually, it could be a pretty cool round. Let's jump into the player awards and get off the Nicki Minaj topic because Defensive Player of the Year, Shea Illy, appears to be the front runner. JLA, one of your other big man society brothers, came out and said that he's the one. It's a criminal offence that he hasn't won in the past.
I think anyone that's watched the NBL this season has seen how dominant the Melbourne United defense has been. And the head of that snake is Shea Illy. Picks up full court, is diving on loose balls all the time, finds ways and little niches that he has in his defensive schemes. It's his timing, it's his understanding of the game. He does it all defensively, and that's why he's the best defender, I think, in this league.
It actually is criminal that he hasn't won one in the past, right? And again, so the way that it is, so the captains and the coaches vote, and he shouldn't have been up for it last year. He only played half the season. But the fact that he even finished top 3 speaks to what his peers and the other players like Sauce know, that he is the best defender in this league. I think he wins it. I think we'll talk on some other players who are deserved runner-up and in the conversation. But this award is named after the greatest we've seen in Damian Martin.
100.
What player looks like Damian Martin more on the floor than Shea Illy? You meant diving on the floor, fighting over screens, contesting everything, putting their body on the line. He is Damian Martin right now than what we see, and that's why that award should be going towards.
Was it last year that Melbourne United were 3-9 without him?
Yeah.
And as soon as he came back, they started winning games. It's because of the way he plays up front. He's a defensive stopper, can shoot it. Plays better on the offensive end than he's been playing, but he's a defensive stopper. Yeah.
One of the most important positions on the floor, the 6th man. Where are you siding with?
I got to go with my fellow former NBA player in Ian Clark. I think that off the bench for the, again, best team in the league, Melbourne United, he's just been very special. Yes. Anytime there's a lull, anytime there's a couple of possessions that something's not going for Melbourne United, they find a way to get him the ball, and he makes something happen. And I just think everything he kind of brings to that team, his leadership and his experience is really great.
I just love saying my fellow NBA player right there. Like just
he wants to let us know he
he
played in the NBA.
We got the Rolex wearing.
We know you played in the NBA, big fella. Give us some.
Look,
Bernard, where are you sitting with this one?
I just think Sean McDonald is been great for.
Still a development player as well.
He's just been fantastic. Every time he comes off the bench, he gives him something. And in fact, Roth lets him play longer than most of the starting guys. You know what I mean? So he trusts him. He comes in, he scores, he can play D, he changes the game.
I think Will Magnay is the other one, right? So Tassie might have an issue where you run into that if it is very close, that you have to decide between a couple of players, and it's hard. Will Magnay's been terrific. I think he's the most important player, and he'll be in that conversation as well. There's some other key pieces around the league, but I think where Ian Clark has been, and some other players have had different looks. I mean, we've seen injuries for whatever reason when you're coming off the bench, but as you said, his impact on an unloaded roster as well is going to be hard to overlook.
Sure.
One of the toughest ones to pick year in, year out, especially in the NBL, is the most improved award as well.
Yeah. I do think that there are a lot of guys that should be up for this. Obviously, a couple guys down in Tassie that could probably win it, but I got to go with my guy, BA, 10 as we like to call him. Ben Ayers' improvement from last season in Cairns, having a very minimal role on that team, to coming into this season not really understanding what the role would be, and obviously injuries have played a part into it, but he's up 5 points on his average from last year.
Yep.
He's gone from shooting 32% the previous year to 40 now. He's shown that he belongs in the NBL, and I don't think there's a question in anybody's mind now that he's an NBL guy. So he's the most improved player.
I'm with him. He's just, and you cross me, I'm crossing.
He sold you? He sold you on that? I mean,
sold me.
again, this is probably, outside, like, the Coach of the Year is going to be very exciting to watch, but I think this is the award that I'm really excited to see which way it falls, because there's so many different players. We normally see that kind of jump for most improved. What Jack McVeigh has done in Tasmania is what Keanu Pinder did last year. All right, so there's two jumps. There's the Ben Air jump, and then there's going from a star to a superstar, and that's what Jack McVeigh's done to lead Tasmania every single which way he's done it. Milton Doyle has been up and down at times. Jordan Crawford's been up and down. He's doing it so efficiently, and everyone's talking about potentially an All-NBL first-team recognition for Jack McVeigh. So then it's a weird conversation to have, because normally when you think of most improved, you think of a Ben Air guy who's potentially out of the league, comes in and makes a big impact. This is the other jump, the other side of it, and he's been terrific for Tassie.
Jalen Galloway's been fantastic as well. Someone who's playing both ends of the floor, who's been exciting, and I didn't expect him to play that well this year. So.
Before we wrap this segment up, the MVP. We all agree Bryce Cotton, right now, runaway. Two numbers for you. Player A, averaging 20 points, 6 assists at 48%. Player B, averaging 24 points and 4 assists at 39%. Who are you going, player A or player B?
24 points for me is that big difference there. Where
I'm talking
are they at on the ladder, if you don't mind me asking?
That matters. Team performance matters.
Come on.
Parker Jackson Cartwright. I'm saying Bryce Cotton wins the MVP award, but I think we need to put some respect on Parker Jackson Cartwright, that this isn't a runaway win. This is a guy that just because of injuries to Cheatham and New Zealand dropping games would have been well and truly up there in this conversation. I think we've put a bit of...
It's a runaway win, mate.
Yeah. I think it is. Again, because if they were higher on the ladder,
for sure,
you'd probably have to, if you're a coach and captain, you're getting that thing, Park Jackson Cartwright, Anthony Lamb, you couldn't decide, I don't think. And there'd be two different ones or 2s and 3s under Bryce Cotton, who's probably going to be everyone's number 1.
Yeah.
So your most improved has gone from 15 points to 16 points.
He's not happy. He's not happy. He's not happy with that. Your decision, bro.
15 points to 16 points.
Argue with the wall. Argue with the wall, brother.
I went from full cream to almond milk. I'm not getting
he's not happy, bro.
that. We got thanks all for joining us. A whole lot more coming up after the break.
You're a funny man, bro.
Welcome back to NBL Overtime. No Santa? No Santa's watching. Unfortunately, we asked Pete to go out and get us some clips, but he said, no, I'm not engaging in that tomfoolery, that childish behaviour, making fun of players for making mistakes. Am I right?
Liam won't be happy. Liam won't be happy.
Hey, you're doing the yes-no then, right? Because that's the other side of it. You're putting in the hard yards that normally happens on this show.
Cam won't be happy. Cam won't be happy.
So you've taken the week off too.
There you go.
Good to see you taking the week off, Josh.
Well, we got one more week to go. Let's have a look at the round 20 schedule. Now, clearly the biggest game of the round is Brisbane versus the New Zealand Breakers, but I ask you, which one outside of that are you most interested in?
I mean, Phoenix and Sydney. That's the one, right? If Sydney want to win, they're going to have to win pretty well, but Phoenix could have some players back, coach.
I heard that Phoenix got some players coming back. Let's see if they can get it done.
They've certainly got some players coming back. They've got a lot to work out in the off-season. Thank you for tuning into NBL Overtime. #NBL Overtime. Remember, smile more.